Greetings. Welcome back to the European Traditional Chinese Medicine Association Meet the Expert interview series. I'm your host, Dr. Aram Akopian. On July 9th, ETCMA will be hosting its annual European School Leaders Day. It is an important annual event that brings together all the leaders from the European schools for a strategic discussion and meeting. In preparation and as a preview for that event, we have a special guest with us today, one of the invited speakers, Christina Rocha. Christina has extensive background in education, and she has a bachelor's degree in international relations, a master's degree in educational leadership, and she's a PhD candidate in language and communications with an interesting focus on an emphasis on curiosity as a communication skill for building global intercultural communicative competencies. She's a TED Talk speaker, an author, and a researcher. Welcome, Christina.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
We look forward to hosting you at our speaker event. So just in passing, what are the key do's and don'ts of effective communication that you'll be covering in our talk?
So there are so many, to be honest, and it's really, I think it's always helpful to narrow it down with a helpful acronym. And this is one that I've developed with my studies and in my with my coursework and my classes, my students, and with other teachers. It's I call it clerking, so CLERC, and basically it doesn't have to be in any special order, all the different letters, but basically the C would stand for communication, and the L is for listening. So when we talk about listening, it's active listening. And what does that mean exactly? We're listening for understanding. We're listening to make sure we understand what the other person is saying so that we can ultimately communicate effectively. The E stands for the environment or the setting, which really I think is it's underlying. It's the whole. If we don't have the proper setting, if we have not established a culture of trust, a culture of safety within the community that we're speaking, whether it's a conversation between two people or more, then we're not going to have that secure environment so that we can feel safe to communicate, to listen for understanding, to ask questions, which is another C in clerk. So when we ask questions, it's for that purpose of understanding further, to ask clarifying questions, to ask probing questions. And it's also an indication to the other person that we're actually listening. And the R stands for reflection, because no matter what we do when we're communicating with someone and we're listening for that understanding, we are also reflecting on what they're saying so that we can formulate a response. Not a reaction, but a response, which shows that we do understand what they're saying and that we are actually reflecting on that. So CLERC, it's clerk. So I call it clerking. Aside from clerking, I would say it's really important, of course, to be clear and concise as well. And it's always helpful to prepare, if possible, ahead of time, so we know what it is that we're going to be saying for our communicative purposes, and paying attention to our wording, being mindful of the wording that we choose, because it's so easy, and this goes with tone as well. Depending on our volume and how we project ourselves. If it's in an email, maybe it's, being conscious of caps, writing in all caps or not. It's very important that we choose our words and we're conscious of the words that we're choosing so that we don't create any miscommunications or offend anyone or whatever it may be. I mean, we want to make sure that we are conscious in using the appropriate wording for what we are trying to achieve with communication. And I've talked about active listening, but also I think emotional intelligence also plays a key role, because we really cannot communicate effectively until we assess and we understand our own feelings. So if we're aware of our own emotions and maybe what triggers them, then we can manage those emotions better and therefore manage how we respond to a situation. Notice I said respond and not react. And in turn, also, this builds empathy as well and having empathy for the other. So it's that listening for understanding from the clerk. And last one, I would say, I think many people tend to forget is nonverbal communication, which also goes for emails as well, because it really, research has shown it can be anywhere between 65 and 95% more of an impact than the actual spoken word. So being mindful, being understanding, and being alert to those nonverbal cues.
Excellent. I have to interject. I can attest to the significance of inadvertently using capital letters in emails and the
Yes,
significant effect that it can have. So,
and text too. Many people don't realize on their phones when they're texting in all caps, it can send the wrong message.
yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. So, what will attendees learn about social emotional learning, SEL, and its contribution to creating equitable learning and working environments?
So I think it's really understand for them to understand what SEL is. And so really it's the process of that through which people really, they can acquire and effectively apply knowledge, attitudes, and skills that's necessary to understand and manage emotions, you know, and how they can set and achieve positive goals for themselves. And also to allow them the space to feel and show empathy for others. To establish and maintain positive relationships, which is so important with communication and effective communication skills, and of course, leading to making responsible decisions. So, you know, it's like the synergy of intentionally practicing SEL skills within any type of environment, academic or social situation. It really provides opportunities for people to develop as well these ingrained habits, you know, that we can transfer then to situations, no matter what situation it is, whether it's in our you know, a patient doctor type of interaction, whether it's a classroom, whether it is a conversation with your spouse. So you know, SEL, it supports the ABCs of any learning environment, and we're humans, we're learning every day. We don't stop when we graduate from high school or college or wherever we're graduating. So it's really helpful for facilitating meetings and professional learning engagements. So when I mean like the ABCs, like the A stands for autonomy. So it's that need to be in control of oneself and empowered to make decisions, because we know people, we make those personal choices about what we can say and do in different activities that we, in different tasks that we make up our day-to-day lives with. The B stands for belonging, which is that, you know, that need to be accepted and valued by others, which is so important for our self-worth, and activities that, you know, we can do, tasks that we can do related to SEL. They're designed so that everyone can be heard and be seen without judgment, which is also crucial, you know, to help in building relationships. And the C stands for competence, and it's that need to be effective so that we can accomplish things. And SEL practices, they really give people those tools for how to be effective across a variety of contexts and to strengthen the intra-personal skills, whether it's, you know, at work, in any situation really. And yeah, I think there's so much that we can take from SEL, and it's actually, you know, I think people get a bit worried, oh, it's another acronym or it's another thing to learn, but it's actually, these are really easy strategies, and I think many people may even do some of them and they don't realize that they're already, you know, doing some of this. And so it's nice to actually see how it all connects together in our relationships and our communications with each other.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think many practice this as a matter of fact, as a normal process, and like an easy operation. Yeah. What are some examples of adult signature practices for that you'll be discussing to help them learn these modalities?
So really it's always having an invitation to allow the adults, to bring their experience and allow them to use it, allow them to share it. So for example, community building, very important, right? With open-ended questions where each participant is able to share their response with a partner. After sharing, they can ask for, then maybe get 2 or 3 responses from the whole group as a facilitator, or checking in, meaning give them some sentence starters. For example, like a success I recently had was blah blah blah, or one thing that's new for me from this is blah blah blah, or one norm that I will uphold today from what I've learned is et cetera, et cetera. So it's opening it up and sharing out a bit, also including engaging stories, because and connections are so important, and we learn so much more from things that we remember and that are stimulating for us. So, and much of that is due to storytelling, and adults really want to make their own meaning. They want to connect to work with colleagues, and they want to have fun doing it. So giving think time, like 30 to 60 seconds of silent think time before speaking and sharing, really important to have that time to process. And of course, turning to a partner, sharing it. We call it think, pair, share. Listening to make sense of that new input. And then there's think, ink, pair, share, which is again thinking about it, writing down some reflection, and then sharing that with a partner. Brain breaks, which are always a lot of fun, in person and virtual it can be as well. Basically, to you invite them to get up, stand up, stretch, maybe do some different fun activities that it's like no more than maybe 2 to 3 minutes, but it's getting their brain rewired. It's resetting their brain. When we get tired, actually when we're thinking the most clearly, it's when their brain is actually in the front of our brain, and the front end. And when we're actually tired, most of the blood in our brain has actually gone back to the back of it, which is when we're feeling really tired. And the thing is, we need to reset our brain. If we have a deadline, we have something we need to do, and we're tired, okay, the best thing to do is like get up, stand up, stretch, maybe listen to music for a quick second or whatever it is, so that we can get that brain, the blood in the brain moving again, so that we can reset it a little bit and be ready to focus. And of course, provide opportunities for interaction, right? Because it really cultivates a variety of practices that really involve interactions and partnerships, whether it's triads, small groups, or a whole group. It really, there's the sky's the limit. But also really important is optimistic closure. And so this is really something like where it invites reflection and looking forward. So we know that adult learning is very much connected to behavioral changes. So for example, thinking like, okay, having like an exit ticket, let's say, of some sort. So what are my next steps? So when is my next influencing conversation about this, and with whom? And who do I want to connect with this about this topic? Perhaps, think of a word or a phrase that reflects how I feel about moving forward with this. Offering an appreciation for someone in the room. And even, okay, I'm eager to learn more about, etc., or I feel proud of myself for, etc. So there's really lots of things that we can do. There's no one size fits all. It really depends on the group and the dynamics that we are presented with.
Great. So you're combining positive feedback loops and reinforcement loops and building lasting, almost like muscle memory. Yeah.
So yes, and it's like these are like tools to kind of change our mindset, right? In the words that we use. And for example, like instead of saying like, I don't understand, okay, can we try thinking instead, what am I missing? Open it up. Or instead of like, and say, I give up, we can say things like, oh, I'll use some of the strategies that I've learned, and okay, maybe, here are some. Or instead of like, I made a mistake, we all make mistakes. Okay, well, mistakes help me improve, right? Or this is too hard. Well, this may take some time and effort. So it's looking at things a little bit differently, and it's implanting different ways of looking at things like that. For example, you might say like when you have something to fill in a report or whatever, and then you're tired, so oh, this is good enough. Well, then actually thinking again about something like, well, this may take a little bit more time and effort, right? Just accepting yourself and moving forward.
Great, great. Thank you. Now, our audience are very research-minded and very meticulous. So as my last question, can you provide some research or resource recommendations for further reading or understanding for our members?
Yes, well, there is so much out there on everything that I've mentioned so far. And I think really depending on what kind of approach you want to take communication-wise, there's so much out there. It's hard to narrow it down. In the presentation, I am going to share some specific examples, including some of my own published research and some upcoming ones as well. For SEL, there is a really nice, it's free and online. There's a signature practice playbook from the latest edition, I think it's from 2019. It's just SEL signature practices playbook. And there's so much that can also be learned from there, both for adults and for students, for younger audience. So it's really, SEL is it's not, it's not something that's for a specific age group. Everything that you read about it, and communication as well, we just adapt it to who our target audience is.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for a very insightful introduction to some of the great resources and techniques you're going to be bringing in. I'm personally excited to hear more about it, and I'm sure our members will be as well. And we look forward to hosting you at our event. And thank you very much for your time and your effort.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.